What's up, everyone? Welcome to Say What I Mean. And I just want to talk about Lovecraft Country. If y'all haven't checked it out, make sure you check it out. It's on HBO. Really dope show. I was just more curious than anything when I first heard about the show. HBO have a decent track record when it comes to these types of shows. I remember Watchmen last year, which I loved, and it, I was tuned in every week. I just wish, they drop all the episodes at once. I kind of hate waiting every week for an episode. I know some people like it because it builds suspense. For me, I'd rather just have all the episodes and be able to watch it when I want to. But that's me. Now, what I love about Lovecraft Country is they do an excellent job of mixing history, especially the Jim Crow era of this country, with entertainment. Because it can be, sometimes when we watch these types of movies and and when they try to put historical content in, sometimes they beat you over the head with it. Sometimes it's too overt and is lacking in entertainment. They do a great job of making it entertaining and sprinkling in the historical facts that goes around it. Now, the first three episodes have been pretty good, especially the first and third episode. The second episode, it was still decent, but that's been my least favorite episode out of the three. The third episode was really, really good. And I just like some of the concepts that they're throwing out here. And every episode so far have seen completely different. And that could be kind of weird in a negative, but in this case, I feel like it works. The first episode I enjoyed a lot. I love how they built the background. And I liked it so much, I actually went and got the book. Now, I'm just noticing, like, with the book and the show, it is a lot of differences. But I'm not even going to get into that. I'm just going to focus on the show. But the show does a good job building the backstory. You have Atticus, who is a black soldier that was coming from the Korean War. Now, and this is what I like about the history of it, right? Black soldiers after World War II and the Korean War, they didn't get treated like their white counterparts, to say the least, when they came back. White soldiers, when they came back from World War II, they was able to get the GI Bill, get VA loans. A lot of these services wasn't offered to black soldiers, even though they served honorably. And it goes to why, well, at least one of the reasons, partly why we haven't been able to build generational wealth. So I'm glad the show is showing this right there. And one thing leads to the other, like, because, and later on in episode 3, you see how Letty is hell bent on getting this house. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later, but a lot of soldiers didn't have these options granted to them. And that goes even deeper with, a lot of the New Deal programs blacks was excluded from. So, during this whole Great Depression period, you had black people was getting discriminated against with the New Deal programs. And even after the U.S. pulled out the Depression with World War II, coming back home, black soldiers were discriminated against with government programs, GI Bill, VA loans. So off the bat, you see that. Also, the first episode, I love the Sundown Town breakdown, because a lot of people haven't heard of sundown towns. It should be common knowledge. It should be something that everybody have heard of, but people haven't. And the bad thing is that sundown towns still exist. There are still sundown towns to this day. What is a sundown town? It's basically, if you were black, you need to be out of this town or inside the house when the sun goes down. Um, and it was really common, especially in the Jim Crow era. So, I like how that played out, where you had the racist sheriff basically following them and basically putting them in a lose-lose situation. You saw that episode 1, where okay, they wasn't speeding, but they put them over. Sheriff asking, "Where are you going?" Um, and it's only 7 minutes before the sun gonna go down. So what you gonna do? So Atticus had to think on his feet. He was with his uncle George and Letty, and he was like, okay, if I turn back around, I can head out of the county. And then he was like, the thing he was thinking on his feet, asked, okay, if I make this U-turn, will you pull me over? And then the cop was just like, good thing you asked that question. The cop was talking so filthy to Atticus. It was just one of those scenes where you hate to see. Also, I kind of like the dynamics because later on in episode 1, you got to the monsters. These type of, I don't know, giant mole, vampire type of creatures. I don't know what they were. But the interesting thing about it, they was trapped in a sundown town. But the monsters couldn't survive the light. I like that little parallel because it was kind of like how vampires, they can't be out when the sun come out. So they had to survive in this sundown town until the sun come up. And they had the sheriffs there, the police was there. The police set them up, stopped them. These monsters was messing up the police. The sheriff's missing an arm. And one thing I noticed is that the sheriffs would rather die than to listen to a black man, because Atticus and George was giving them like, okay, this is what the situation is, and they didn't care. They would rather die than to actually listen to a black man give them some advice. That's how entrenched their racism was. And that's, and you have people like that to this day. You have people that would literally die for an ideology. They don't care if it's bad for you, for them. They so entrenched in this one belief, they willing to even sacrifice life for it, which is amazing. So, I mean, just everything about this, just the fact it's called Lovecraft Country, when H.P. Lovecraft was a racist. I like how they flipped it. And like I said, episode 2 was okay with, I don't want to get too much into that, but you see the character of Christina when she come back in the episode 3. You have them getting a liver, like a human liver. You met everybody in the Sons of Adam. And yeah, episode 2 was okay, but I really want to talk about episode 3. Episode 3, it might be my favorite episode so far. Although I really like episode 1, but I feel like it might be the most complete episode so far. Now, Letty bought a house, and she wanted her sister Ruby to move in. And again, it goes back to the housing, because she got the house with an installment loan. And back then, right, and she got the house in an all-white neighborhood. And it was so many bad real estate practices. Everybody know about redlining, where couldn't get loans in certain neighborhoods. Everybody know, well, I won't say everybody, but a lot of people don't know about like stuff like blockbusting and staring. Now, blockbusters is when a black family move into neighborhood, and they convinced the rest of the neighbors to sell their house for cheap because the neighborhood's going to change ethically. So that happens a lot. That's called blockbusting. You have steering, where the real estate agent won't even show certain homes to a specific race, specifically Black people, and they try to steer them into certain neighborhoods without giving them all the options. That's steering. So it briefly touches on that. It doesn't call them by name, these tactics by name, but that's what it was. Also, it starts off by stating that this episode started off by stating 3 white neighbors disappeared, and that was going to be a big plot. Now, why these white neighbors disappeared, and what happened? Letty was the first Black person in the neighborhood, Letty and her sister Ruby. And these white neighbors was not happy at all. You see a variety of things happen through this episodes: cross burnings, horns, bricks in the car, so the horns just stay beeping. Just a lot of stuff going on. So I like how Letty and George is starting to build a relationship. But it's kind of weird, right? Because George seemed not to be interested in her until he saw her dancing with another guy. And then they went to this whole, scene where they're just staring at each other while she was dancing with the dude. Following the bathroom, they end up, doing what they do there. But turns out, she started bleeding. I was thinking yeah, girl, you didn't know you was on your period or whatever. But turns out she was a virgin. But that scene was kind of different. And it goes back to once she get back to the party, they got cross burning in the yard with the bricks. So what I like about this is that everybody worked together, right? So Letty had the bat. She ended up breaking the windows, but people had her back. You had Atticus and some of his boys. They all had shotguns, so the white neighbors couldn't do nothing to Letty while she was busting up those cars. Then when the cops came, Ruby came with her car, and everybody threw the guns in the back of the car, and Ruby was out. So when the cops came, they couldn't just shoot or bust them with any firearms. So when cops came, they all dropped to their knees, put their hands up. Very smart. It was good to see Black people work together like that. I was feeling that. I was feeling that a lot. So after that happened, you see a little police brutality, or a lot of police brutality, when Letty was in the back of the squad car. They didn't have her safely fastened in, and they giving her a rough ride. And she's smacking one end, she's smacking the other end. Reminds me of Freddie Gray in Baltimore. That's what happened. He wasn't fastened in, and he ended up with a broken neck. And again, not surprisingly, but it's very unfortunate, none of those cops got convicted, even though Marilyn Mosby tried, and the media tried to crucify her for bringing these cops up on charges. Just that story was infuriating, like all these stories are. But so it's just little stuff like that I think people is not catching. But so far, it's been great. It really has. And then you got all the supernatural on the elevator, right? Elevator almost took off Letty Apple earlier in the episode. But then when the white men, there was 3 white men that broke in, and when they broke in, I guess they was going to try to terrorize Letty and everybody else in the house, but it didn't work out like that. The elevator ended up knocking this white dude head off. and a baby with a grown big body scared the other two so bad they ran into, I guess, the heater or something, and steam got into their face and they end up dying. Um, it is crazy. The whole backstory about that is too. Reason why this house is haunted. It was a scientist, I believe that was at the University of Chicago, that previously lived in this home, and he was experimenting on Black people. And again, goes back to how Black people have been experimented on. I mean, this is facts too, not just Tuskegee, but you can go back to eugenics, because there was a eugenics program in this country for a long time. So, if you look up, especially like in North Carolina, look up how Black women were sterilized in North Carolina. It's a crazy story. Like, the state had to admit to it, and it was a whole big deal about the families getting money for that happening. I mean, there's just so much stuff that happened that it seems like, nah, that ain't really happened. That's just storyline. But no, stuff like that really happened. So this white scientist was experimenting on Black people, doing all sorts of crazy stuff to them, and he wouldn't even let go of his racism in death. So he wanted Letty out that house bad. So, Letty gets, I guess, a voodoo lady, her Atticus and her Atticus and voodoo lady go down there, find spirits. They end up pushing the evil spirit out, even though the spirit ended up, taking over Atticus' body for a brief second. But, Letty kept it together. They was able to cast that spirit out. Now, I'm looking forward to where it goes, because at the end of the episode, George tried to went and saw Christina, and guess he was about to kill her for messing with his people. And that was interesting too, because it seemed like they was trying to set up some type of chemistry or some type of interest between Christina and Atticus in the other few episodes. And I'm glad that seemed like they're going away with that. And Atticus and Letty, it seemed like that's happening now, which it happened that episode. So I'm glad that it looks like they're getting away from that Christina storyline with George in that aspect. But, he couldn't kill Christina, not because he couldn't pull the trigger, but it was because he couldn't pull the trigger. I know that didn't make sense, but what I mean is he wanted to, but Christina had a spell on him where he literally couldn't pull the trigger. Literally couldn't pull the trigger, right? And then, basically at the end, she was like, what would you think? You gotta be smart. You can't just go around killing white women, and gave him like one of those looks like, yeah, I got you. You can't do that. And I do wonder what was Atticus' plan though, because, I guess he was thinking nobody saw him going there, and how was he planning to escape and get away with that? I'm not sure. But so far, great. Like I said, it does a great job mixing history and entertainment together. I'm interested to see where it goes. I definitely am. And I like the fact that you have complex character. So I'm interested to see how George's father is going to play a role in this, because it seemed like he got a lot of demons. Atticus' son, which, he raised him as a son, but might not be his son, might actually be his brother's son, and a crazy love triangle. Him and Atticus don't have a great relationship, but, I could see how that would put a strain on the relationship when you notice the whole time and son don't. So I'm interested to see with that. Even Letty. I like Letty, but she's she's kind of complex character too, because as much good as she does and she's great in these situations, she seemed like she didn't have the best relationship with her mother, and she got some inheritance money, or at least that what she thought. Turns out came from Christina. So, but that she thought that her mother left her some money, and instead of splitting it with her siblings, she decided to buy that house, and which is cool. I understand her vision, but that was wrong. That wasn't her decision to make. She should have split it with her siblings, and Ruby called her out for that. Ruby left the house after she found out, and she's gonna have to do some work to repair that relationship, because I would be mad too. That's grimy. That's grimy, and you see all the time family fall out because of money. If you get an inheritance or some money from your parents, which unfortunately in our community a lot of times that don't happen. A lot of times when our people die, we have to scramble for money to pay for the funeral. So like stuff like life insurance is important. But anyway, I digress. Make sure you split it with your siblings. Like just taking it off yourself and decide, even though she wanted Ruby to live with her, like Ruby might not wanted to do that with her portion of money. She might want to do something else. That's not your decision to make. So that was definitely a terrible move by Letty. But yeah, I'm hooked now. At first I was like, I don't know, I'll give it a chance, but now I'm hooked. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you check out Lovecraft Country. Great, great series. Peace.